Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. It's not really a ramble and a ramble today, it's just a one ramble. Answering some more questions. This week we're talking about gear. So the first question was from Will. Thanks very much, Will, for the question. What gear am I using in what situations? You specifically asked, like, what's the setup for river running, surfing, play boating, and coaching? So the first thing I want to say about that is that all of my gear choices are situational. They depend entirely on the conditions on the day, who I'm with, where I'm going, am I coaching, am I not coaching? Many factors that come into play when deciding what gear to take on any given day. For me, it's now about having the right tool for the job when I need it. Trying to escape that mindset of unhealthy minimalism and having healthy minimalism instead. What am I carrying on any given day? Well, in terms of boats, these are my quiver behind me. About 6 months ago I wrote an article about that, so if you want to see more about the boats that I have in my quiver and the things that maybe I would like in my quiver, then there will be a link to that in the description down below. The gear that I'm taking on the river, there are certain elements that are consistent all the time. At a minimum, when I'm out on the river, whether that is in dry bags behind me or on my person, I am carrying a throw line of appropriate length to the river. So one of these guys or one of these guys, depending on where I am and the situation I'm in. In the UK generally we have quite small, narrow, creaky rivers, and so I usually find that having a shorter line is okay. If I'm going abroad, if I'm somewhere like the States where they've got big volume, wide rivers, I want to have a much bigger line. And quite often I'm carrying two lines. I have one behind me and one in between my legs that's quick grab and throw. I'm then also carrying enough gear to make a pin kit. Now most of that gear is inside my buoyancy aid. So I have inside my buoyancy aid, or rather between the inside of my buoyancy aid and my throw line itself, I have my pin kit. So I have one carabiner attached to my throw line which can be detached when I need to. I have my sling with another carabiner already attached. These Wetman slings with the massive wide hoops reduce your headache on the river so much because you don't have to be faffing and fiddling with tiny little holes threading your carabiners through. So that's a minimalist pin kit already. Two carabiners, a sling and a rope. Done. I do also, in my creek boat, carry a dry bag with additional pin kit bits, prussiks, pulleys and some extra carabiners. I'm not going to get into the pulley debate. The fact that I've never used these in anger maybe enters into that fact, but we're not getting into that right now. In my buoyancy aid I then have also knife, because working with ropes might need it, and a bit of surf wax for the hands on the paddles, or it can be used to fill a gap in a split boat. Really useful stuff. Gear to make a pin kit. A first aid kit. When we're paddling, you need to have a first aid kit that is going to be suited to the types of injuries you're expecting to find paddling. That's frontal cranial impact and bleeding and hand injuries. So stuff to sterilize, stuff to wipe down, stuff to bind a wound and to stop bleeding, basically. If someone's really injured, I'm getting them out of there. I'm doing the best I can and I'm getting them out. In winter, you're then also wanting to carry spare warm layers, hat and gloves. Really important in the winter. A means of communication of some kind, and depending on how remote I am, that might change. And then the other main safety item is a form of spare paddle. When I'm in a slicey boat like this, the likelihood of fitting in a split paddle is pretty limited, and so that fallback is a less ideal but still present hand paddle. But normally it's a split of some kind. So yes, at a minimum, that is the gear I'm carrying on any given day, whether that is on my person, in my boat behind me, or in the grab bag. Now, this is where the distinction between non-coaching and coaching days comes in. On a non-coaching day, this will look slightly different in terms of the distribution of where it is. But on a coaching day, I have my grab bag, which is easily accessible, and the grab bag contains an overlap of some of the stuff we've already talked about, but it contains spare warm layers, okay, a hat that I can put on when I'm on the bank or at the end of the day, a spare thermal, the difference of being able to change into a spare thermal midway through the day, or even change your sweaty wicking layer for a non-sweaty dry wicking layer, the difference that makes on a winter day is huge. This has then also got my camera gear, you're currently there, but it would be in here, camera gear, and a little towel so that I can wipe my hands and wipe down the camera if I need to, just avoiding wet wherever possible. A waterproof notebook and a pen to be able to draw stuff, take notes, whatever. I'll also have some food in here, a banana, something like that, river bananas, great. Means of communication, like I already said, depending on how remote you are, that might just be a phone, but if you're going really remote, it might be something like a spot beacon or a sat phone, something that you can use in an emergency if your phone doesn't have signal. And related to that, regardless of how remote you are, you should know the river that you're going to, know the area around the river. And that means for me, taking a map. It might be that I'm just taking a printout that I've done of the local area myself. It might be that I actually have the map. So, for example, a river like the Dart is gorged in and it's committing. And if something goes wrong in there and you need to hike out, you need to know where you can go. So having a map of the area and a compass preferably so that you can navigate your way out safely is a really, really good thing. The only other thing I might carry in the grab bag is a little bit of money, a £20 note or something. The only other thing in terms of gear then, vital, is paddles. Now paddles for me, it again comes down to what type of paddling I'm doing. If I'm doing freestyle, I'm using my wooden paddles because they are short, they are designed for that kind of paddling, and they're light in the hand, they're beautiful. Really love these. If I am slicey boat freestyling, then again, equally short, equally light, but just a little bit more willing to be smashed into a wall or a rock. And then out and out creaking, we have the old Burner Surge. These things are solid, I really like them. Having them as a two-piece split is really handy because it means that I can be using one set of paddles and have these as my breakdown emergency paddle, but equally as a frontline creaking paddle, these are phenomenal. There's just that extra little bit of length by choice for me, but creaking means I've got a bit more leverage, and the extra power in the blades is fantastic. So Will, that was your question, gear. The other question that we're going to tackle this week is, Gerald, you asked about the pros and cons of carbon boats. So let's get that out in front and have a chat about that. So, carbon boats. Thanks for the question, Gerald. You were asking, what are the pros and cons of carbon boats, and is it worth your average paddler getting a carbon boat? The main pros are the stiffness and the lightness of carbon against plastic. A plastic boat, when it is bouncing down a wave, for example, will hit the water and the plastic will deform and take some of that kinetic energy and just completely waste it. Whereas a carbon boat with its stiff hull is going to hit and take all of that kinetic energy and use it to be rejected. So that is one major advantage, the stiffness. The other thing is the lightness. This boat is 9 kilos versus a plastic boat of the same size, which might be 16, 18, 20 kilos. 20 kilos would be very heavy actually, probably more like 18 at the most. But for me, that lightness was a really big factor. I'm someone that walks a fairly decent distance to get to my nearest water on a very regular basis to go and train. And so carrying my boat is a consideration, and having a lighter boat makes that easier. As to disadvantages, the obvious one is cost. A carbon boat will set you back quite a bit more than a plastic one. Although frankly, with the way that pricings are going at the moment, a plastic boat is costing nearly £1,000 nowadays, if not more. And certainly when I bought it, this was only £2. So the difference is there, but it's not huge. And I would argue probably for some people it's worth it. If you are an avid and regular playboater, it could be worth the cost. The other major consideration of whether a carbon boat is worth it for you is the fact that they can be made to a custom size. That was the main reason for me why I went for a carbon boat. I'm slightly awkwardly sized in that I sit in between the small and the medium on most major brands' playboats. And so the opportunity to have a playboat that was cut to size and cut to volume for me was a really big draw. It meant that I could have a boat that was the size of a small paddler with the volume of a medium paddler. And obviously you can achieve similar results in terms of fit with a boat simply by outfitting a plastic boat correctly. However, the combination of factors of lightness and stiffness and that custom size, that was what made me go for a carbon boat myself. And it might be that the same things would sway other people as well. So hopefully that helps to answer a couple of questions. It's certainly been fun for me getting all of the gear out and having a ponder about this. Thanks for the questions. Keep those questions coming in. There will be more of these kind of Q&A style videos coming up soon, as well as that really exciting collaboration with my friend Joel. Look out for that one fairly soon. Thanks for watching.